And we are back at the Denver Post podcast studios. The Nuggets just lost 2 brutal games back-to-back. One brutal for different reasons than the other, but both brutal, I would say. It smells great outside, a little chilly. Rockies opening day coming up, and it's about to snow. Bennett?
Gosh, it's going to snow?
It's supposed to be wintry mix, I believe, yeah.
I've been so encouraged recently because the stairwell from, event level where the locker room, the media workroom, all of that is at Ball Arena up to the concourse that I'll take sometimes. There's a window looking out at sort of the Elitch Gardens area, I think, the mountains behind it. And usually if I take that stairwell up to the concourse or back down before the game, it's already dark for most of the season. And now it's still sunny when I'm looking outside and I'm like, man, this is great. We're back. When I drive to the arena, it is bright and sunny and not too cold. But you just ruined my entire mood by telling me about the snow. So
that's how it's going to go tomorrow. Speaking of cold, how about those Nuggets? It's
been a wintry week for them.
Yeah, that among the most brutal losses that I can remember in the regular season for the Nuggets. So the Minnesota Timberwolves have now handed them easily the most brutal playoff loss that I can remember the Nuggets ever losing. And
yeah, I don't think that's up for debate.
And among the most brutal regular season losses that I can remember in quite a long time. And to put a cherry on top of that, they had a game the next day. And Michael Malone essentially wagered one game and lost 2 because of it, because he went so hard to win that one. It cost him the second because, oh boy, the lineup that we saw for that second game against the San Antonio Spurs. You would think both teams were tanking on that game with what they were throwing out there. And to Michael Malone's credit, hard to blame him for the end of the game against Minnesota. And also, you kind of understand, or totally understand, why he wouldn't want to throw Nikola Jokic back out there after he just ran a marathon the night before.
No doubt. So, I want to start with this. I put out a little Twitter survey yesterday morning asking which regular season loss was more painful. The 2 options were Timberwolves double overtime, Russell Westbrook misses the layup. And
61-point triple-double, too. I forgot to mention that.
Yes, fouls the 3-point shooter to cost Jokic's 61-point triple-double a win in the end. Or Game 81 against the Spurs last year, where they blow a 23-point lead to Wemby and company in the second half. They would have been the 1 seed in the West if they win that game. Instead, Devontae Graham, who I don't believe is in the league right now, hits a buzzer beater to win by 1.
Could be on the Jazz, maybe. I don't know. A
complete and utter collapse that leads to them falling to the 2, having to play Minnesota in the second round, and then losing another heartbreaker in Game 7. 70% of voters, I've gotten over 250 votes, 70% of them say the Timberwolves won. I think it's a little bit of recency bias, frankly. I asked a couple of Nuggets people their opinions last night, and after thinking about it, the 2 people I asked both said the Spurs game, just because it was right at the end of the season and it had such immediate and kind of black and white ramifications on seeding and the outcome and that sort of thing. Well, and they played terribly. That's another difference. They completely beat themselves for an entire half and gave up that game to a bad team, whereas this one...
Isn't that also why this one's more brutal? Because Nikola Jokic had an all-time performance.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Spectacular in that game, and they lost it. A 61-point triple-double, and they lost the game. Plus, we really don't know what the implications yet are of this loss. They could be pretty large. I mean, I just said it not that long ago. Malone went all in to win this game, and it cost him the Spurs game too. So basically 2 losses in one.
I think that's the case for this one, because it could end up being as important or even more important from a seeding standpoint when all is said and done, because there aren't a whole lot of losses that you can say this loss actually equals 2 losses. There's no other way to look at that. Jokic, 53 minutes. He checks back into the game for his usual sub pattern around 6.5 minutes left in the second quarter. Plays the rest of the first half as usual. Plays the entire third quarter as usual. Starts the fourth quarter with Denver down by 5 points. I wasn't shocked by this in the moment because there have been a couple of games recently where Denver has been trailing by a manageable amount, bordering on getting unmanageable, and Malone has decided to roll him out in those opening minutes to see if they can make a push or to see if it gets worse, at which point you just sit him the rest of the game. The first OKC game he did this. They kind of stayed in the game a little bit. He tried to sneak him a couple minutes of rest before he came back. Game ended up getting out of hand in the fourth quarter later on. Nuggets lose that game. I asked Malone post-game if he had been thinking about playing Jokic the entire second half in OKC, and he looked at me like I was absolutely crazy and said, no, I couldn't do that. We cannot run him into the ground.
So that tells you, well, and I left out a pretty big fact here. Jamal Murray wasn't playing. Michael Porter Jr. wasn't playing.
Yes, against the Timberwolves. So yeah, the game that they lose by 20 at home against the Timberwolves a few weeks ago, Malone also does this with Jokic at the start of the fourth. It goes terribly. The good news about that one is you pull him from the game. The game's over. They were down big and whatever. So this time, they go on an immediate 7-0 run to start the fourth. They take a 2-point lead at 10:45 to go. Finch calls a timeout for Minnesota, and I'm thinking, wow, this went perfectly for Malone. Great call. And Jokic is definitely not going to come out of this huddle. They're going to get him his 2 minutes now, and maybe worst case scenario, they're back down by 5 or 6. But you can look at that like they held serve for the rest, so to speak. Instead, he comes back out. The Nuggets keep going on their run. It becomes a 16-2 run, I think. Finch calls another timeout, and I think Jokic is not going to return from the huddle. He does once again, and I think after that second Finch timeout that he comes back from, that's when it becomes clear that
he's all in.
He's all in. Jokic is playing this whole game. Malone said afterward that Jokic said he was fine and wanted to play. I think this kind of gets at, a thorny topic that has been ongoing with the Nuggets, which is Jokic doesn't like to sit when he cares about winning a game he really wants to play. At what point does the coach need to be the adult in the room and say, no, I'm sorry, you don't have a choice here? That's what Malone ended up doing for the San Antonio game. But in this case, they're like, all right, let's see if we can win this thing. It's tough. Like, can you knock Malone too much when it worked, kind of, and they just didn't win for other reasons? Like, it's a tricky one, but at the same time, by the time it's going to double overtime, you're thinking, of course, this is what happens when they decide to play him the whole fourth quarter in a regular season game. Like, just brutal karma over the whole thing. And then they end up losing in maybe the worst way you can possibly imagine to lose a regular season game.
They had the game won. If you and I were doing a live recording, watching the game for people to listen to our reactions, we probably would have thought that they'd won, and we would have blurted it out and said it in real time.
So did you, watching on TV, did you think they won initially?
No, I knew immediately. I heard the whistle because I was watching on TV, and I heard I'm sure in the arena it's probably harder to hear the whistle than on television.
I did not hear it.
I did, and I knew immediately, they just called a foul, and Russ, I would say, over-aggressive on his closeout. Mm-hmm. Let's get into that.
Yeah.
So, because we've talked.
Credit to TNT, by the way, for cutting directly to the best possible reaction they could have cut to, which was Peyton Watson looking completely horrified by the situation. And And it just reminded me of like those cuts, like the cut that shows up in the One Shining Moment video in a few days of someone reacting in horror to how their season ends. But it's a regular season game in the NBA. Like it was a perfect just like cut to show how much the teams cared about this game.
Well, I mean, it was pretty clear at that point, in for a penny, in for a pound. It was just they wanted that game so badly.
Mm-hmm.
And Minnesota winning it is, we can talk about that later. There's some cascading effect here that's not good for the Nuggets. But I knew in real time, the thing I think that shocked me was when they got the steal, how aggressive they were at attacking the hoop on the other end.
Okay. Let's get into this. So you take issue with the decision.
Well, I mean, there was a way that Russ could have just taken that ball, gone out to the corner, trying to find somebody else that's a good free throw shooter to get the ball to, drain another 5 to 6 seconds on the clock. The thing that you knew is that Minnesota was broken in their half-court offense end-of-game situations. Like they had run 3 plays and gotten a terrible look.
Or a turnover.
Yes, or a turnover. They just they hadn't done a single thing right. Credit to the Nuggets. They were blitzing Anthony Edwards, and it was working out wonderfully. They did also, Finch, what are you doing? But yes, burn some clock, make them have to score on you in the half court rather than, granted, he probably makes that layup 9 times out of 10, although the next night he did smoke a layup against the Spurs.
So I'm glad we disagree on this. I think the decision is perfectly fine.
Okay.
I think it was actually a perfectly executed 2-on-1 break.
It was.
The pass to Christian Brown, the pass back, like they did that. It was textbook execution.
And then you just
I think you just
layup.
have to make the freaking layup. To me, that's what it is. And I'm gaming out the possible outcomes in other scenarios. If Christian or if Russ decides to pull it out. One, they're not guys who are, like in Christian's case, not super experienced taking those kinds of free throws in those pressure situations.
I think I'd trust him in that situation. Russ, not so much.
Russ is just not a fantastic free throw shooter for a guard. And he had just missed one moments earlier, case in point. So are you guaranteed to get 2 points by pulling the ball out anyway? I don't think so necessarily. You have 2 easier points right in front of you that you just have to get. If you make the layup, Minnesota's going to have to call a timeout.
With 10 seconds left still, though.
And run their half-court offense and run a set play to get 3 points anyway. So,
that's a good point.
So that's going to be unavoidable. Also, how much faith do you have in Westbrook to veer away into the corner and not end up turning the ball over if he faces a trap a minute later?
Yeah, okay.
As
That's
we
a good
saw
point.
happen at the end of the first quarter, for instance, against San Antonio the next night, and I thought Westbrook had a really good game against the Spurs for the most part, but he still had some Westbrookian
didn't have a good
moments.
Closing 4 minutes.
He most definitely did not. But, there's a play at the end of the first quarter where he gets a rebound on a missed free throw and dribbles into 3 guys, and it turns into an extra layup at the buzzer for the Spurs. Yeah. So, who's to say that doesn't turn into a disastrous turnover and it's the same scramble play getting back on defense?
I guess my gut instinct is just run as much clock as you can. There's because Minnesota is scrambling to get back, like you're probably in an advantageous situation as far as getting the ball to who you want the ball to get to. But yeah, I think either way, I don't think that's the biggest argument.
You gotta make the layup.
You got to make the layup, and then on the contest, you can't be barreling in like that on your contest on a 3-point shot. You've gotten the shot that you want from Minnesota, right? That's it. You're pretty comfortable.
As soon as the ball is out of Anthony Edwards' hands there on the driving kick, you're living with whatever happens, I think.
Yeah, you're fine with it. Makes a shot, okay, well, fine. Yeah. Their secondary guy made a shot. But and Nikhil and Alexander Walker, that guy,
good player, good shooter,
fantastic. Mm-hmm. He was great in that game. But yeah, you can't be barreling in like that. You can't, after you smoke the layup, just stand there for a second and sort of look around. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you got to get over it, Russ. Get back. Be in better position. I mean, this is the thing with Russ that, like, I brought this up way back when I made my Russ prediction, and I got to tell you, I'm feeling like Nostradamus right now. This is the gamble that you take with Russ. He can give you amazing, explosive 5 to 10 minute bursts, right? And if it's a night like last night, he can carry your team with the starters in street clothes. But you get to the end of the game, and he just does some stuff that you just scratch your head at. Like, how does that happen? The end of the Spurs game is another example. Like, he was bad in the last 4 minutes of that game. And it's not the first time.
It's not. I feel bad for him to an extent because when this sort of situation happens with him, it is amplified.
No doubt.
10 times louder locally and nationally, I think, in whatever market he's in than any other player making those kinds of mistakes.
Well, it's because he has that reputation.
Yes. And so, like, that stinks for him. But it's tough. He doesn't help himself that much either by not talking to the media about it, which is his choice. He doesn't have to listen to me sit here and say, "Oh, you should be talking to the media," whatever. He's a 17-year vet in the NBA. He can make those decisions on his own.
Future Hall of Famer.
My opinion doesn't matter, but I do tend to think when a guy makes a mistake like that, he ends up earning a little more sympathy from the fan base generally when he just talks and says, "Hey, I'm sorry. I know I messed up. I'm sorry to my teammates. We played really hard. I'm going to be better. I'm going to try and turn the page." Whatever. Like, that can be pretty rudimentary, cliche, whatever. Like, I tend to think that gets a little bit more sympathy, at least from fans, and it doesn't
right about
quite
that.
so much when you don't talk. So,
right.
Whatever. So yeah, the foul. Do you think that should be called, by the way, in that situation? Because this was another sub debate off of the whole thing.
If they did or didn't call it, I think I'm fine with the result. I think it was a reckless challenge from Russ. Like, he has to. At that point, you're not jumping towards that guy. It's like the one thing you can't do. You can't jump in his direction. And it's a foul that gets called all the time in the NBA. Like, you see that get called often. Now, end of game.
Counterpoint, you also see it not get called often, I think. So I'm of two minds on this. By the letter of the law, it was absolutely a foul, and you just can't close out that aggressively.
Yeah.
And, I don't think he should necessarily be off the hook for just the reason that, it was a tough call. On the other hand, I have always kind of been of the mindset personally that time and place kind of does matter, and that there should be a little bit of discretion with whether a foul like that actually impacts the result of the shot. And looking at the replay, the foul occurs, the closeout occurs well after the ball's out of Alexander Walker's hands and as he is coming down.
Yeah.
Do you want to let a game like that be decided by that? Like, that's the kind of thing that I don't know. When I've been just like a neutral fan watching a basketball game, I get frustrated by that type of thing sometimes. And so I was thinking about that a little bit.
Also, you could just say the last 40 seconds of that game were officiated poorly.
I think the whole game was officiated pretty poorly. I don't think it favored one team or the other necessarily. For crying out loud, Jokic had a career high in free throw attempts in the game. So, he got his fair share of generous whistles after he was ripping into a couple of the refs early in the game. But there was a bizarre sequence. You have Westbrook misses a free throw for the lead with, 13, 15, 18 seconds left, something in that range? The rebound, I think everyone up to the top row in Ball Arena knew that went off Minnesota.
It looked like it.
And the refs were the only people in the building who did not know who the ball went out off of. And
Hey, Ron, do you have an opinion?
Excuse me, I had a pretty good view from where I was sitting, about 10 feet away. It looked like it went out on Minnesota. The ref in front of the Denver bench clearly didn't have a viewpoint on it. He looked over to the other ref, who was up past the elbow.
Yes.
They looked at each other. Then the ref at the elbow said, "Let's go jump ball." Nobody was watching the baseline or had a good vantage point of it, rather.
And, in the end, it worked out for the Nuggets. They got the jump ball with the foul, right?
To an extent, but think about it this way. If they just make the correct call, which I believe the last 2 minutes report the next day from the league confirmed that it should have been Nuggets ball.
Love those 2-minute reports.
Yeah, always very useful. If that's Nuggets ball, I'm pretty sure the shot clock is off in a tie game, and they can throw it into the backcourt from the baseline and have their chance at one play, and it's worst case scenario triple overtime.
Right.
So, and then none of this happens potentially.
Right. So
Instead,
in a way, we have to thank them because it was kind of fun.
Instead, it goes to the jump ball. Jokic, was it Randall? Who I think it was Jokic and Randall. They both jump a little too eagerly.
Yes.
The ball comes down. Their arms get a little tied up. It seems like it's going the other way for a Minnesota fast break, and they call a loose ball foul on Minnesota that also seemed questionable. And
I think it was a foul.
Aaron Gordon says after the game that the Timberwolves, in the immediate aftermath of that foul call, were explicitly complaining to the official, C.J. Washington, how can you let a game like this be decided by a foul, by a whistle?
Lovely. That's great.
So Jokic makes one of two free throws. Then the entire sequence happens with Westbrook. And as Gordon points out afterward, it's not a problem for them when the game is decided by a foul call when it's in their favor.
Right.
A little bit of irony there, but whatever. To me, it's one of those where I'm just like, maybe we should use our discretion and not call the foul, but also Westbrook can't do that. And the game was just bizarre from an officiating standpoint the whole night. And so whatever, they kind of got what they deserved for beating themselves in those last 10 seconds, I guess. So.
Yeah, I don't feel a ton of sympathy for anybody in this one. I think it could have gone either way, and it just happened to go the way it did. And it went the way it did in part because one of the guys on the court just made two really bad plays in a row.
Yeah.
And that feels kind of right that turned the game. I don't know.
In a way, it makes it more memorable. It was already in this kind of tier of as close to a classic as you can have in a regular season game.
Yeah.
And having a ending that probably infamous more so than famous,
Yes.
but it's one that will be remembered, I think, in Denver, Minnesota, and elsewhere around the league for a long time.
No doubt.
And so that kind of staples it as far as its crazy reputation. The other context, the fallout of it, 6 straight losses to the Timberwolves, swept in the regular season series, all 4 games. Just brutal stuff. A couple of Nuggets people told me they felt like it was important from a psychological standpoint in that Denver showed that they're not just going to get pushed around by Minnesota's physicality. There's a little bit more confidence that Minnesota doesn't have their number in the case of a playoff series as a result of this game. All of that, I think that's a fair way to look at it. I think the counterpoint would be that the Nuggets, I don't know how much more they could have really done, and they still lost.
They unleashed all of the ammunition at their disposal.
Yes.
And still lost the game. I don't know how that's a moral victory. To me, no.
Yeah. On the other hand, you could throw out the whole game if you wanted because Jamal Murray's out, Michael Porter Jr. is out, Dante DiVincenzo's out, Naz Reid is out from the suspensions after the fight with Detroit. So there's a whole lot of important guys missing from that game too. So
quick aside.
Yeah.
I just love that Detroit's back to being these brawling jerks. That's just perfect. You cannot draw up a better scenario for a team just being back to type than Isaiah, what's his? I can't. What's the big man?
Stewart.
Isaiah Stewart being on that team. I mean, it's just perfect.
I was like walking in Cheeseman Park in Denver. Shout out to Cheeseman, great park.
Love that
park. When the fight happened and someone texted me, a bunch of people just got ejected, Detroit and Minnesota over this fight. And I was like, well, that's Tuesday for the Pistons.
Right. Well, and Holland, too, is also just on brand.
Is taking up that mantle a little bit from Stewart. And, I was just like, the last 2 years that Denver's been in Detroit, Malone and Jokic get ejected in subsequent quarters last year.
Yep.
And then this year, Malone gets the fastest tech of his career, maybe of any coach's career, 49 seconds in, and tells David Adelman, I'm prepared to get ejected again. So, it's
what fun.
Good for the Pistons.
So, the Nuggets, let's see, they've got, it looks like 5 games left, correct?
5 games left.
5 games left. So they're 3 games back of Houston at the 2 seed. So the 2 seed kind of feels like that's done.
That's not happening.
That's not going to happen. They trail the Lakers, or they don't trail. They're tied with the Lakers, but the Lakers have 2 more games that they have to play.
Technically, they're slightly behind the Lakers from a win percentage standpoint,
right?
Because the Lakers have those 2 games in hand.
Right.
They are ahead in the loss column, which is kind of the important thing. So,
but the Lakers have to play a back-to-back against Oklahoma City.
Great point. Yeah.
So they're losing at least one of those, if not both.
So Denver's schedule. Let's see how many you think they win.
That's what I was about to do.
Okay, thanks.
So, I just want to lay out where things are at. They're essentially 1 loss behind the Lakers, but the Lakers have to play 2 more. Golden State is 1 loss behind Denver, and they've played the same number of games. They've both got 5 games left.
And a head-to-head game.
And a head-to-head, which is going to be huge. Like, if they lose that one, we're getting in danger zone for like the 5 seed.
Definitely.
And behind them, 2 losses behind them are both the Clippers and Minnesota. Both are 2 losses behind. And it looks like they've only got 4 games left, both of those teams. And Memphis, but I have a feeling Memphis is going to lose another game or 2. I just call me crazy. So let's go over the Nuggets schedule. What's left? And just to be clear, I penciled in the Spurs as a win, and I looked at this like a week or 2 ago. I thought, there's no way they're losing that game.
Fair of you to do.
They lost it. So, Warriors at home, I believe. Is that correct?
On the road.
Oh, on the road. You're right. I'm sorry. On the road. On the road, 8 p.m. on Friday. Whew. That's a tough
game.
One.
And the Nuggets kind of went in there and punked them without
right. So they're motivated.
All their guys.
So they're motivated. Also, we don't know, like, is Jamal going to be back? Is MPJ going to be back?
Yeah. Look, as it was described to me after that Minnesota game, like the minutes played in that game could bleed over and have an effect, not just on the Spurs game, but on the Warriors game.
Man,
so
tough.
Yeah.
And the Warriors are playing really well right now. After that, Pacers at home. Pacers are also playing really well right now. And that's not an easy game at home. You got Kings at the Kings. Very winnable game. Kings playing terribly. Grizzlies at home. They got to win that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
They absolutely, and then Rockets on the road, but we don't know where the Rockets going to have anything to play for.
Yeah, there's a pretty good chance they're just clinched in second and resting their guys.
Right. So it could be a more winnable game than you would think otherwise, right?
4-1 should be feasible.
Right.
In those 5 games, I think.
Right. But 3 and 2 also in play.
2 and 3 is also in play, especially if Murray doesn't play this game and Jokic doesn't play this game and Porter doesn't play this game. So it's that age-old question, how hard do you push for a certain seed? How much do you prioritize your health and say we're going to have to beat good teams anyway in the playoffs? Like, it's
if I'm the Nuggets, priority number 1 is getting on the bracket side opposite Oklahoma City. I want to be with the Houston Rockets.
This is the thing, yeah.
On that side of the bracket, because that is a clear path to the conference finals. Now, granted, you might have to play one of the Warriors or the Clippers in that 3-6 game.
Or the Wolves.
Yeah, or the Wolves, and that could be really, really tough. I think Memphis is – it's hard to not see them losing a couple more and sliding out of that 6th seed area. You don't want to be in that 4-5, and then you got to play OKC in the second round. I think you really want to avoid that as much as possible.
I think what kind of cements that stance is the fact that it's not the Lakers who have surged forward into that 2 space. It is Houston. So you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone by ending up in the 3 seed because the Lakers and Thunder are both locked on the same side of the bracket, and you're guaranteeing that you would only have to play one of them.
Right. Which is, I think, exactly what you want. Now, granted,
if the Lakers are the 2 and you're the 3, and then it's, well, okay, it's Lakers and Thunder probably back-to-back series anyway, then does it really matter whether you're the 3 or the 4? Maybe not so much. But in the way that this is starting to unfold, I do think there's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, you just absolutely have to be on that Rockets side of the bracket. That is, and I'm guessing that's why they pushed to win that Minnesota game as hard as they did.
Well, yeah, I think it's a combination of that, and they really wanted to beat the Timberwolves.
Yes. Yeah.
Jokic really wanted to beat the Timberwolves.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm sure. So, which brings me to my next little game here, which is we're going to rank first-round opponents, who they could buy. You did this.
A reprisal of this, because
Yes.
I frankly, if I did the same thing today that I did literally like a week and a half ago, I would rearrange some of the rankings, I think.
Right. So here's your potential first-round opponents from what I can tell. They could play the Lakers in the first round. That's not out of the question at all, right?
Yeah, not at all.
They could play Golden State in the first round. They could play the Timberwolves in the first round. They could play the Clippers in the first round. And they could play Memphis. I think any one of those teams is a possibility, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to play.
Houston at this point would take a pretty disastrous finish. And
I don't even think that's. I guess yes, it would be a total disaster.
They technically haven't clinched a spot
right
in the top 6 in the playoffs yet, but yeah.
You'd really have to collapse. So with that in mind, who's the team you most want to play? I think, personally, it's the Grizzlies.
I think so, too. Yeah.
They just fired their coach. They can't beat any teams worth a darn. I just can't think of a team that's playing worse right now than them that's in the conversation for Western Conference playoffs.
Yeah. I think I said it last time. The one thing that looms is Jaren Jackson and Edie together. It's a new double big lineup. Could that, present some problems for Jokic? It could. I'm not sure it's enough to swing a series with those teams the way that
they're broken.
I've been watching the Grizzlies play recently.
They're totally broken. And also, John Morant will miss a game in that series at some point. It feels like he just has a trouble staying on the court. All right. The next best opponent for the Nuggets. Is it the Clippers?
I think it's Golden State. Is that crazy?
Really? I want to see Friday, I guess.
I mean, they could lose Friday. I'm not sure my opinion would totally change. Golden State, they're just small. They're really small, and you feel it every time you watch these two teams play head-to-head. Denver, I think there's some fan strife occasionally that, Malone doesn't adequately use the size at his disposal on the roster, and when he does, it's especially advantageous against the Warriors. And Draymond can't really do anything against Jokic. I don't know if they have anyone who can do anything against Jokic. Steph Curry, I kind of wonder, I think Denver would have a lot more trouble slowing him down this year than they would have with Caldwell Pope, who, to me is, I don't know, from the games I've watched, one of the absolute best in the league at handling what Curry does, which is I am going to be running a marathon, sprinting around off-ball screens for the entire game, chasing you over these things. like getting bumped and chipped by guys' shoulders and still staying with you and getting good contests. He is outstanding at that. The numbers like showed it last year for Curry in the matchup. Curry had a terrible game, his worst of the year, when Denver visited them a couple weeks ago. Maybe that's just an anomaly.
Well, no Jimmy for that game either.
No, Jimmy played.
Oh, did Jimmy play in that game?
I don't know if he was that good, so I'm not going to blame you for that. They were all terrible. The Warriors were awful in that game, so I'm not going to blame you for forgetting that anyone was out there. But I just like that's not Christian Brown's skill set necessarily. I'm not sure it's Peyton Watson's skill set in large samples. It's not Russell Westbrook's. I think they could have trouble with that over the course of a series, but then again, Curry had a terrible game against them. Like, we still haven't seen it necessarily that Curry's better against this version of the Nuggets. So okay. I don't know.
All right.
Whereas with the Clippers, just like the looming specter of what if they are all healthy?
The thing is, I keep like, we're doing this again with the Clippers.
I know. We're all idiots, kind of.
Every year, like, oh, they're closing strong. They look so great. And then Kawhi is out in game 5 of the first round. And it's, like, we don't know. He looks great right now. He could easily play a couple of series and be really dangerous. And certainly he has the chops in a first-round series to scare you. But, man, James Harden doesn't scare me. I'm not really.
He's also been closing pretty strong this season.
Yeah, so. I believe he's up above 40% for the season now from the field.
If you've watched a lot of them, you might be on the Zubats train.
Oh, he's been great, yeah.
I'm not sure if we drafted him at all when we did an NBA centers draft like a year and a half ago.
I can't remember.
He's always been just like a solid center. You had a very good season last year. He's been incredible this year, both ends of the floor. When they have Zubats, Kawhi, Harden, Powell on the floor, like their net rating like comes out among some of the best lineups in the league. Like they are in that class when they're fully healthy. It's just, mileage varies on confidence that they will be healthy.
Right.
I don't know. I think them at 2 is perfectly fair.
I don't trust James Harden in the playoffs. I've seen it too many times. You can't fool me again, Bennett. I'm sorry. When he gets in the playoffs, it's kind of trick or treat. You don't know what you're getting. And it could be really bad. Like really bad. Like I'm taking step backs from 35 bad. Zubac is neutralized by the fact that the best player on the floor is also a center and will destroy him.
Yeah.
And
I like their depth too, though.
Yeah, they've got depth.
Dunn's a great defender. Bogdanovich has come in from Atlanta and been pretty solid for them.
Okay.
All right. He's just like a good, reliable like bench scorer who can handle some minutes.
Sure. Yeah. To me, there's a decent bet that the Clippers are not healthy for that entire series, and that is enough to swing it for me.
Perfectly fair. So you would have them at 2.
I would have them at 2.
Okay. But Warriors at 3 then?
Yes, Warriors at 3. I think most definitely, right? Because the Lakers, I mean, Luka and LeBron together in a series, and also it should be mentioned, Austin Reeves, like that, having 3 guys like that.
That should absolutely scare you. Yeah.
That's kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
Now, granted, they aren't tall. They are kind of big, and I don't know if you noticed. They've been doing, and we talked about this before.
They can play a very big small ball, basically.
Yeah. Well, they've been putting LeBron, like if you watch that Rockets game, LeBron
on Şengün,
is on Şengün, and he does that now. He'll guard the center, and he's strong and thick enough that it works out fine.
If you think back to, that regular season game earlier this year that everyone talks about, where they kind of deployed that game plan for Jokic for the first time, but even going back to the playoffs the last couple of years, LeBron will take Jokic for small sample sizes within a game. 2-3 minutes here in the fourth quarter, a couple possessions there, and he can be formidable at it. You can't do it in large portions.
It's going
of
to be
time
a lot
with
of
him,
Rui,
but, like,
I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like Rui's going to have to just get battered around for 6 or 7
exactly.
games.
But like the fact that they can do that with LeBron, that they can put Dorian Finney-Smith in there for him for a few minutes, like they're
and he was on Şengün in that game too.
Yes, exactly. Like that's how I would describe it. It's like they would probably play quote unquote small against the Nuggets a lot, but it's a big type of small ball. That's
right. That also is like full of
plays out.
shooters, like
Yeah.
just a ton of shooters on the court.
They're two most ball dominant all-time great players who, you can say Luka's a point guard, you can say LeBron's a point forward kind of in a way. Like they're both huge for that type of ball in hand player. So I don't know. It's
right.
They're an I think I would have them at 4 and Minnesota at 5.
I agree.
That's how I would do
I
it.
agree because at this point, Minnesota's in Nuggets' heads. They're just all the way in there. They've camped out, set up a tent.
Michael Malone would disagree.
I'm sorry. How many games in a row they won? They just emptied the clip against them and lost. And I mean, I don't know, one of the 5 best performances of Nikola Jokic's career, and they still lost. I don't think that's a positive.
What do you make of Malone, kind of his reaction or messaging after that game being mostly proud?
I think he had no choice.
Okay.
If I were him, I would have done the same thing. You have to back up your guys. You can't.
They did play really hard and played really well.
It was a
game.
great competitive game.
We didn't even get into some of the stuff they did. Like they cross-matched. They had Jokic on Randall, and he did a pretty good job for a lot of the game.
Yeah,
although
he got into foul trouble.
Sure. They had Peyton Watson would start possessions on Rudy Gobert, which allows you to do a couple things. One, Gobert being the offensive liability that he is, if he's just taking up space, Watson can kind of creep over and use his best skill set, which is, in my opinion at least, which is weak side rim protection.
Yes.
For a wing, he can kind of afford to do that. Or Minnesota runs a ton of Ant-Rudy pick and rolls, and the Nuggets have had screen navigation issues all year. Well, if Peyton's on Rudy, you can just switch that and not have to worry about fighting over the screen. You can limit some of the pick and roll pull-ups, that type of stuff. And he was able to do that pretty well for a lot of the game. So there was a ton of stuff that the Nuggets did really well in that game. And so I think it made sense for Malone to come away proud. But the result is still just as brutal as you can imagine, especially because they just didn't get the return on investment for the hard work in the minutes.
Right. They showed their hand, and they still lost.
Yeah.
And as great as the defense was on Anthony Edwards for 3 quarters, they did a great job taking him out for 3 quarters. Anthony Edwards still took over in the 4th quarter and made that a winnable game for the Timberwolves.
He is one of the quintessential don't let him see one go in guys.
Yes.
I said the first time he made one, I turned to our esteemed Luka Evans, newcomer. I said, uh-oh. And I was like, this doesn't feel over just yet. And I think Denver was up 7 or 8 still at the time.
They got up to double digits in that 4th quarter.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's a killer.
Sure, you can take away positives from that game, but the end result, given the investment that the Nuggets had in that game, just feels dispiriting to me. And you can go into that Timberwolves series and say, "Oh, listen, we played right with them. We're not afraid of them, and certainly they could beat the Timberwolves, no doubt about it." But you know what the Timberwolves can do? Win in Denver. They're pretty good at winning in Denver.
Yeah,
and that's a problem.
Well, how many is it?
But they won,
I guess 3 of the 6 games in the current
right.
Losing streak have been in Denver, 3 in Minnesota.
Right, and they won games 1 and 2 in Denver last year to start the series. I don't think that's a great matchup for the Nuggets.
Jamal Murray
Call me crazy.
Jamal Murray and Michael Porter have both struggled in the matchup. So, I mean, one thing that we didn't get to see in this game was how they were going to handle the matchup with a little bit of motivation to try and end the losing streak and all that. So who knows if that keeps carrying over to the playoffs.
Which brings me to my other concern. We're still got Jamal bumps and bruises, and the playoffs are about to come.
Sure. I think they're being pretty, careful to an
Conservative.
extreme extent with him right now.
As they should.
Yeah.
They need him. They don't win a championship if he's not healthy, right?
No doubt. Yeah, that's
It's in order.
Michael
Aaron
Malone
Gordon.
has attributed the turnaround in Denver's season directly to the swing in Jamal Murray's play that started in mid-December.
Pretty accurate.
He has
and the
pointed to
return
it
of Aaron Gordon.
very unambiguously and directly and said we were 11-10 and they'd lost to the Wizards at this point. Look at Jamal Murray's stats before then and look at them after then.
Yeah. Aaron Gordon coming back in the lineup, I think, probably has something to do with that too.
Yeah, that definitely helps. Do you fully trust his shot, by the way?
Aaron Gordon's shot?
Mm-hmm.
The evidence is piling up in the
It's
affirmative.
starting to get there to where it's this isn't an anomaly season.
He made a huge 3 in that Minnesota game. It was a 6-point game.
He made 2.
That's true. He did make 2. But the one when it was a 6-point game, basically, if he misses that, game over.
Yeah, so it's a great point. And what's really encouraging about it is I think it's the last minute of regulation. I don't know. Was it like a Gordon Jokic side pick and roll? I don't know exactly what it was, but Minnesota had the 2 defenders sink off of Gordon at the right wing, and they had actually guarded him on the perimeter more than usual for most of the game. And in this spot, Denver down 2 or whatever it was in the last minute, they decide it's time to live with that shot, and Gordon misses the open shot. And you're like, okay, in the back of your mind, you're just thinking is this going to hold up? This incredible season he's had, this incredible percentage, is it going to hold up in these defining playoff moments if teams decide that that's still what they're willing to live with? And it's a deflating miss, but they end up getting a stop. I think Christian Brown takes a charge, great play. They tie it, they force overtime, and as you said, I think Jokic hits a 3 first, cuts it to 3. It gets back to 5, and Gordon just pulls up with a hand in his face and hits that 3 to get it back to 2 with a minute or so left. And that, on the heels of the miss in regulation, him taking that with such confidence and making it, I think is pretty massive. I think it speaks volumes. And then he makes another one to give them 2-point lead with a minute or 50 seconds or something left in double overtime.
Catch and shoot.
Yeah. So
Yep. All right. Well, we've got a game we want to play. We're going to take a quick break first before we do. We're gonna play the confidence game. Who are we most confident in? Who are we least confident in?
On the roster.
On the roster, as postseason play looms.
My name is Mike Singer, former Nuggets beat writer, and I wrote a book. It's called Why So Serious? The Untold Story of Nikola Jokic. I get into his early years. I talk to teammates, coaches, family members, and I think that I kind of changed the way that people may understand Nikola. And so if you're interested, it is available at HarperCollins.com, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Why So Serious? The Untold Story of NBA champion Nikola Jokic.
And we are back after our quick little bathroom break and donut break. Chocolate-covered donuts for Bennett. Pink coffee for Aaron. We now have ourselves a little game.
Aaron just has a travel coffee cup with a pink lid. That's all. I just felt like
Bridget's Bakery from London. Was that a trip to London?
Quite cultured, yes.
Yeah.
quite.
So here's the game. We are going to list our confidence 1 through 10, 1 being no confidence whatsoever, 10 being give the man the ball at the end of the game. For every player of note on the Nuggets roster, we'll leave it up to Aaron, our MC on this, to decide who's of note, and we will go through. Aaron, you want to start?
Thank you, Sensei. All right. With a win percentage of .662 and a 43-22 record as a starter, Nikola Jokic.
Out of 10?
Yeah.
Like 500, you know?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. It's 10 or exceeding 10 by any degree that you decide. You just had a 61-point triple-double and basically got whatever shot he wanted at the end against the Minnesota Timberwolves.
This could factor in to the confidence as a knock against some of the other guys. But it wasn't just the consecutive minutes that Jokic played. For basically both overtimes and late in regulation, every Nuggets possession was, we're going to give it to Jokic with his back to the basket. Even though he is on fumes, he's going to back down Randall after Gobert was out, or whoever is on him, and he's either going to score, or if they double, he's just going to make the right read. They were just playing out of Jokic post up every single possession. And when he would pass out of the double, other guys would get it on the perimeter, and they looked like they, frankly, did not want any part of it.
I think we can get into that after when we start talking about those players.
And yes, I just think it's relevant to note that the confidence that everyone has in Jokic is extremely high, to the extent that how high is the confidence in themselves? An interesting question.
Yes.
So
we didn't get into this at all, but I believe the MVP has been decided, right? That's just to make sure we just quick touch on it.
I think so. I mean, like, it was already leaning Shea, and then
the betting odds are way in SGA's favor at this point.
I just, I think Shea's a deserving winner, but I think it should be a lot closer than it is. That's kind of my
I agree.
take,
If I had a vote, I'd still be voting Nikola Jokic because he's maybe one of the greatest statistical seasons that I've ever witnessed. Efficiency, production, all that.
The 5 games off was a little bit of a nail in the coffin, I think. So
Yeah.
All right. With the second highest win percentage, AG just under 650 at 24-13.
What are they without him?
Without AG,
Yeah, I thought you were.
they're 17
bragging
and
about
14.
Okay.
17 and 14. Without and with 24-13 as a starter. And then obviously he's come off the bench a number of times, and he's 30-16.
How much does health factor into the confidence thing?
It's up to you. I got a number in mind for myself.
I mean, I think he's one of the players I would feel most confident in when he's actually out there. Obviously, the calf stuff that he's been dealing with all season should probably be taken into account to an extent, so I think I would go 7.5.
It's funny you said 7.5 because that's the exact number that I had in my mind. It was 7.5. One other thing I think that is in the back of my head is, do I 100% trust that he's going to make an open shot with 10 seconds to go that he absolutely has to make to keep the game alive or win it? I can't say I'm 100% there. I mean, yes, we just talked about it. Mm-hmm. I think, he showed in the Minnesota game he's not afraid to take big shots, and he's been fantastic all season. But, it's the playoffs, man.
Very fair. Kind of interesting. He has the third highest on-off net rating differential on the team. Jokic is obviously the highest. Christian Brown is second highest because, in part, his minutes are the most glued to Jokic's.
Yeah, he's tethered to Jokic.
Gordon's minutes are a little less tethered to Jokic. Like, sometimes they are, but they've used him second unit as a 4 and a 5 at points. Like, they've done a little bit more different stuff with him, and they're 8.2 points per 100 possessions better with him than without. So, notable.
Right.
Very valuable player.
Next up.
You've got a couple of Iron Men here. Christian Brown and MPJ played a great number of games this year.
Why are we not doing Jamal Murray yet?
We'll get to them.
He's the second most important player on the team. What are we?
We're bookending it with 2 important players.
What?
Jokic to Murray. All right, so Christian Brown, 45 and 29 in games played this season. How do you feel about Christian?
Let me just throw this in here before you start. You brought it up just a second ago how all the players couldn't wait to get the ball to Nikola Jokic.
He was chief among them.
He was number one on that list, and that factors into how I look at it.
If Jokic was passing out of the double to him, his first read was to wait for the double to disappear from Jokic and to feed it back to him in a different spot.
Yes.
On the other hand, Christian Brown made what should have been a game-winning 3 top of the key against Phoenix a couple weeks ago.
Correct.
So just big shot maker. In the same way that health took away from my rating on Gordon a little bit, I think Christian Brown's durability and the minutes that he's capable of playing probably helps him out. He's becoming that wing defender who's just going to be on the court a ton. We remember him playing almost the entire game against Boston recently. So I'm going to give him, a 7. Even if there's some stuff that maybe isn't fully proven over a consistent playoff sample size, and he's still young and all that. He has earned a lot of trust, I think, to be a guy who's just going to be out there.
6.5.
Okay.
What I saw at the end of that Minnesota game was a little scary. I just thought this feels like a sneak preview of things to come in the playoffs. And who knows? He's not a guy that lacks in confidence. So it could have just been that was the moment, and Nikola Jokic just had it going. We're going to get him the ball. But I kept being like he has a lane to drive. He has an opportunity here to make a play, and he's just not taking it. That's why I got him at 6.5.
Now, on the other hand, I think you raise a valid point. He also went for 18 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals in that Minnesota game.
Good game.
He was very good, and he's been very good.
This is a psychological thing more than anything else.
Yeah. I think it's the taking versus passing up open shots.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it fluctuates. He's going to have some open looks in the playoffs. That's going to be the biggest thing. He's going to be good for some critical transition moments, energy moments for the crowd. I think his defense has improved throughout the year. I think he's getting better at fighting over screens.
Yeah. Can he make that wing 3? Can he, when they're giving him that shot on the 3, can he make? I don't think that's going to be a big part of their success in this playoffs.
Yeah, very fair.
Next up.
MPJ, who follows Christian Brown's 45 wins with 44 for the second most on the team at 44-28.
Without him? You were bragging about how you had their records without all these guys. Now you're not saying any of them.
3-2.
Right.
It didn't seem that important to list the 5 games that he.
I guess that's fair, but
3-2.
Last night, literally at Ball Arena, you were like, "Man, I've got all these records."
Well, there's a couple guys still to come.
These guys,
you're jumping ahead. Have some patience. Follow Sensei's lead and be patient.
Bennett.
6.5.
Same. I think that here's my problem with Michael Porter Jr. You and Troy Rank in I would say a good column spelled this out. You don't know what you're going to get from Michael Porter Jr. on a night-to-night basis, and you don't know what you're going to get in the fourth quarter from Michael Porter Jr. on a night-to-night basis. He has not had a lot of big fourth quarter moments this season. It doesn't feel like to me, and that is a bit concerning.
Game winner against Dallas.
Okay, fair enough. I'm talking about like a stretch of 3 minutes in the fourth quarter. It's like,
no, that's fair. 3-point percentage has been down a little bit since the All-Star break.
Yes, and he might not be healthy.
Yeah. So, yeah, he's been dealing with kind of a hamstring and a little bit of back pain that's just been compensation from the hamstring, basically. So he said he's kind of felt like that's impacted the balance on his shot a little bit. Some of that. Part of it with him is that, like, he didn't shoot well when they won the NBA Finals. It's an important aspect of his game, the most important aspect of his game, I would say.
You think so?
He had a bad series against Minnesota as well last year when they got eliminated. Their last series of back-to-back years in the playoffs has not been great for him. So I think it's fair to take that into account. He was incredible against the Lakers in the first round last year. He was amazing.
Very good.
But, yeah, there's a streakiness. There's an inconsistency there. Teams are going to hunt him on switches. Like, that's just going to be part of what it is defensively with him. And, I think he's capable of being pretty incredible player and, like, a important player for them. But, the inconsistency factors in. That's why I go 6.5.
Next up.
Russell Westbrook. The Nuggets with Russell Westbrook in the starting lineup at about 0.611, 22 and 14. With Russell Westbrook in the game, 40 and 30. At 40 and 30, it would appear they're 7-0 without him this season.
Are they really? Oh, you know what? Yeah, they are because...
Yikes.
Okay. I understand that looks bad.
It does not look good.
It's worth taking it in context, which is the only 7 games he has missed were after he got hurt late in that Philly game, and they won 7 straight games against really bad teams before the All-Star break without him. Yeah. So it was just one stretch of games that they had a win streak because they had their easiest part of the schedule. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm not here to say, like, they don't have that win streak if he's playing in those games. I don't think that's...
Give me your number.
4.5.
Oh, wow. Okay. I was actually going to say 5.
Okay. I think that's fair. I think the 4.5 to 5.
Can I just put an asterisk on that, though?
Okay.
It's a 5 as long as Michael Malone isn't putting him out in crunch time.
I think end-of-game situations are the important thing.
Keep him off the floor in crunch time. I want him as an energy guy in, end of first, in the middle of that second half kind of, but like with 6 minutes to go, you got to get him off the floor.
I tend to agree. He's actually capable of being a really impactful player for them in the playoffs. I think that they just need to not overuse him. Like, he's a bench player. He's a role player. He can be really good in that role for stretches at a time. And that's great.
Right.
They can't over-rely on him at the end of games and run through him. Or if he's out there at the end of the games and they're not running through him, the problem becomes spacing,
because they're going to sag off of him big time,
and it's really impacting what you're able to do with the 2-man game with Murray and Jokic, or with Jokic out of post-ups, and like either or, whether you're going ball in hand for Westbrook or not in those situations, like it can get a little hairy. Right. So, I don't know. I maintain that like he has been a good signing. I know fans,
no doubt about it,
get frustrated with live ball turnovers, and the end of that game was obviously brutal. It was like, I'm not going to make excuses for him on the end of that game. I think he knows that he messed up. Like,
bad.
But look, they got him at $3 million, and he is like anyone who you sign at $3 million, you have to expect is going to make some mistakes and is not going to be a perfect player. And he has brought a lot of positive things to their team. So
no doubt.
I think that bears mentioning at a moment where he's taking a lot of heat. I'm just going to say that, even though my confidence is a little low.
Wrap it up. Yes, he's been great as far as what you need. Just bottom line, if he's on the floor with 2 minutes to go, I'm out. I'm all the way. I'm a 0.
And the Nuggets may be out.
Yes.
Fair.
Yeah, he cannot be on the floor. Michael Malone has to know that at this point. Next up.
Jamal Murray, the starter with the lowest win percentage amongst the group that we've listed at 600. They were 8-2 without Jamal Murray heading into the last 2 games. Now they're 8-4. Looks even better for him at that point. And his record stands at 39-26.
Me first?
Do you want me to say it? Okay, I'll go. Yeah. I'll give you a number if you want me to go first.
I'm just curious.
8.5.
8.5.
Yes.
I was going to say 8.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the health is the...
Yeah, the health is the only thing that scares you.
And maybe the Minnesota matchup a little bit.
Yeah, the Minnesota matchup would be tough. But here's the thing. I've seen him do it many times. I've seen it happen over multiple seasons in multiple playoff environments against all sorts of different teams. That guy, I'm riding with, and I'm fine with it. End of story.
Perfectly fair.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget, but last year was truly his first and to this point only bad postseason of his career.
And he hit 2 game winners.
And he still hit 2 game winners. Like he is still a player with a pretty ironclad playoff resume.
Yes.
Overall. And he's been good for 4 months straight at this point. Right. So when he's out there, he's been
right. As long as he's right, health wise, and that's why the 1.5 is off of there. Like that is a concern. There's no doubt about it. But he's a dog in the postseason.
He's played more games this year than last year, and he's going to finish the season with a career high in scoring probably.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's after,
crazy to have thought about after maybe the worst month of his career to start the year.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. At some point, somebody needs to get to him and be like, "You need to be ready in November." Could you be ready in November, please? Can you actually be a good basketball player in that month? If
that's a conversation for September, though. You know? So
he's all NBA if he does that. He's an all NBA player if he just shows up and has a full season like the last 4 months.
Yeah, I think I agree. He's been outstanding.
Is it all concerning to either of you that the Nuggets are 15-4 without Jamal and Westbrook?
No, I think
that's quite a record.
I think it's some of that is happenstance, and I'm not going to put a ton of capital into that. I won't. I
think I agree. Who's next?
Yep.
All right. The only other player to start more than 10 games at 8-9 and a 47 win percentage is Peyton Watson.
I mean,
he's not going to start.
Yeah, he's not starting in the playoffs. So
I'll give a confidence number. You're not.
No. I want to keep going even beyond Peyton Watson. I think, but honestly, I like the offense is going to hold me back a little bit. So I think I'm going to go like 6.5 overall. But I'm really confident in his defense.
Yes. I think he's a fantastic defender.
If it's just defense, I'm like getting closer to 10.
I'm sorry, I got distracted. What was your number?
6.5 overall. The offense holds me back.
5.5.
Okay. I'm just like really, really confident in his defense. I think
I'm leaving him open at the end of games, and I'm living with that shot if I'm the other team.
I mean, same as with Westbrook. I think that they probably don't want to be closing with him unless it's an offense-defense situation. You're able to bring him in for the equivalent of those Minnesota possessions at the end of the game, that type of thing.
Yeah. But there's a really good chance they're going to be stuck with him out there in a big moment. And
probably at some point.
He's the guy that I'm trying to funnel the ball to.
Yeah.
If I'm the opposing defense.
Like Westbrook, another guy who's been sneaky good from the corners, by the way. So not so much from above the break.
But a little different with a minute to go in the fourth quarter
of
the playoff game.
No doubt.
You like him on the defensive end. He had that beautiful contest on Julius Randle at the end of regulation.
Yeah, he did have a nice contest on that.
Julius Randle, quick aside, that dude, he does stuff that I just don't get sometimes. He had the ball.
He does some really good stuff too, though. Like he's
he does. He had the ball, I think, 2 different times at the end of an overtime or regulation. One of them was settling for a step back. The other was guy with 5 fouls is guarding me. Let me get the ball out of my hands as quickly as possible.
And not to Edwards. Went the other way to the corner. So, yeah. With Peyton, like his offense is just still really raw to me. And whether it's end of game or any other time in the game, I think that's a concern. And so that brings me down. But my confidence in his defense has gotten extremely high, honestly. So,
yep. All right, next up.
Everyone's favorite Siena product, Jalen Pickett. Penn State as well.
5. 5.
I'd have to say 4 just because.
He's never played in the playoffs.
Yeah, you just never know how it's going to
Right. I'll say this.
over.
Had he been the one with the ball at the end of that Minnesota game, I would have felt a lot better about things than Russell Westbrook. And there were points at the end of that Spurs game last night where it's like they should be running the offense through this guy.
Shout out to him, first career triple-double.
Yeah.
Worth mentioning, like, if we rewind to last July and we're watching him play at Summer League before this season, and I told you at that point he's going to have an NBA triple-double this season, like, you wouldn't have believed me.
No way. There's no way.
So, incredible strides by him, I think, yeah.
Yeah. He was the best player on the floor, in my opinion, in that Spurs game for the Nuggets.
I think I agree, yeah. He's just, I mean, his assist-to-turnover ratio is 4.3 or something, 4.2.
He's steady.
That's really good.
He is really steady. He makes good decisions with the ball. He does not force things, unlike Russ. And I don't know. I just like what I'm seeing from him.
He's very, he's very kind of off rhythm. He's very asymmetrical, but he makes really smart reads. Like he's kind of sees the floor in advance of what's happening in a pretty impressive way, which you just don't usually see that from a guy in his second year who was drafted in the second round.
Yeah. There's not too often where he like fires a 90-mile-an-hour pass at some guy who's like 5 feet away.
Yeah.
Not to bring up Russ again. All right, next up.
The undefeated champion of the starting lineup at 4-0, Julian Strawther.
Is he going to play?
I don't think he's going to play.
4.5.
I would have him at a 4 as well right now.
Okay, 4.5. Whatever, 4, 5. I think that's in that ballpark. I would be surprised if he was in any crunch time situations on the court for the Nuggets.
Just based on circumstance, timing in his career, he is the equivalent of Peyton Watson last year, right? Peyton Watson, second season, kind of the last guy in the regular season rotation last year, the guy who was kind of on that fringe of will he or won't he play in the playoffs. That's what Strawther's been this year, the eighth man in that kind of role, also his second season. The difference is that both of them have an end of the court that they're very flawed at. For Peyton Watson, it's offense. For Julian Strawther, it's defense. But Peyton Watson was better at the thing he was supposed to be good at this time last year than Strawther is right now, if that makes sense. So,
yeah.
And Watson still didn't end up playing in the Minnesota series. So,
yes,
if and when Strawther comes back and is healthy, I just don't see them playing him much, if at all. Maybe for a spot minutes sort of situation.
Somebody's in foul trouble or something like that.
Foul trouble, 3 minutes, need a little spacing, hope he can knock down a shot or two, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Zeke Naji. Before the game last night, Bennett told me his betting line for statistical
I didn't
output.
tell you his betting line.
That wasn't you?
I, in fact, don't know what his betting line was.
It sounds like it was made up.
It was made up by someone else in the room who was very confident in Zeke Naji having a good game.
Who was this?
I'm not going to name names.
Yeah, we can't name names.
But this person predicted 16-8 as the stat line.
16.5, I believe.
I don't think it was even being referenced as a betting line. I think it was just someone's prediction for what Zeke Naji's stat line was going to be in the San Antonio game.
How did that hold up?
And I said I would take the under on that probably. And I was correct. So
16-8, huh?
I can't say who said it, but yeah, I heard the same thing.
Look, my confidence is pretty low, but I also kind of think they need to try him for at least a couple minutes.
Depends on the opponent,
points.
I think. Doesn't it? Like, if it's the Lakers, I don't think you want him out there.
Here's-
if it's
yeah.
a team that's bigger, you're probably going to have to go out there with him once or twice.
I think there's an important delineation here. Confidence rating in Zeke Naji as a center is 0. Confidence in Zeke Naji as a 4, I'll put at 5.
So that it factors into a 2.5
I
cumulative?
guess so.
Because I was going to say 4 all told.
Yeah, that's fair. His net rating with DeAndre Jordan going into last night, it probably went down a little bit last night, but in 100 minutes this season was 13. That's without Jokic. Najee playing the 4 in a lineup with a different center, so not just the quote unquote Jokic merchant effect.
Yes.
Still a really good net rating, and it's even better than that when he does play the 4 with Jokic. So I believe his net rating as a center is -19 or something in that range. So,
I think we now have plenty of evidence that he's not a center.
yeah.
I think that evidence now exists, and we can just put it away. He's not a 5. Do you have any other players? Because there's one I want to put out there.
I have at 2-10 in games played, Vlatko Cancar. You love his big moments.
Has he played in 12 games now?
That's what it says, and he's had some big moments. Nice shots.
He had a couple of shots last
He
night.
had a really good sequence against San Antonio
Yeah.
and a really good sequence in the win at Golden State
Correct.
a couple weeks
He's
ago.
a great sequence guy.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
2.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's on the
For
court,
playoff minutes, probably
if
2.
he's on the
Yeah.
court in the playoffs, something has gone grievously wrong, and this is not good for the Nuggets.
As a person, 10.
Oh, 100 million.
Delightful guy.
Yeah, no, lovely person. All right, I got one I'm going to throw out there.
DeAndre Jordan?
No, Michael Malone.
Oh, okay. How have we not talked about DeAndre Jordan?
How many minutes is he going to play in the playoffs? Like 15 total?
Don't underestimate the minutes that he might play.
Well, that's part of my Michael Malone grade right here.
Okay, what's yours?
Michael Malone confidence, 7.
That's pretty good. I think I would say the same.
I think
Malone is prone to sticking to his ways at times, and
yes.
and this roster, this situation, the rotation that he has been dealt is going to maybe require a little bit more situational flexibility, and I don't know that that's something that he's going to be quite as comfortable with or willing to do. But maybe he will. I mean,
I am absolutely terrified that he's going to stick to his guns with Russell Westbrook, and he is going to have him out there in crunch time moments, in big games, in the playoffs. He shouldn't be doing that. That is he has enough evidence now. He's got to know that can't happen. But I could see it happening, and that scares me a little bit. Other thing, we had that Minnesota game, Game 7. Wasn't his best moment, and that just lingers in the back of my mind. He didn't throw out. He has his gut is ride Nikola Jokic for as many minutes as possible. Go full Tibbs with Nikola Jokic,
which to an extent
is good.
You can't blame him,
but I would say it really backfired in Game 7 last year against the Timberwolves. He needed to be off the court for a couple of minutes, and Peyton Watson needed to play a couple minutes, and just give your guys a little break. And that's my concern.
Yeah, perfectly valid. I think one of the biggest internal fears the Nuggets have is a similar situation to last year, where it just hits a breaking point where suddenly Jokic is on empty and Jamal Murray is on empty, or one guy is hurt and the entire depth chart is thrown off and the rotations are thrown off. Like, I think that's it's a precarious situation, and are they capable of making a deep run with what they have? Certainly. Are they capable of flaming out? Also, certainly.
Yeah, their floor and ceiling are pretty big. And the thing is You would say that about almost all of the Western Conference
Yeah.
teams except for OKC, right?
Yeah, I think so.
OKC, they're getting to the second round at least, right? All the other teams, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. What's your matchup? Who are you playing in the first round? Every single one of them, it's a total question mark that they're going to be around for the second round. But at the same time, every single one of them, you could like squint and see a conference finals, maybe even NBA finals run. Right?
No, I think so. It's what makes the West so interesting this year. And there's that just kind of looming trace of doubt that everyone has in the experience of the Thunder too.
Yes.
And will they just kind of be a juggernaut and prove everyone wrong, or will they kind of be level with some of the playing field in a couple of series and a couple of matchups? Like it's going to be an interesting postseason.
You know what's interesting about the Thunder? Go and look at their record in close games. It's not spectacular. They haven't played a lot of close games.
Okay. No, yeah, okay, yes. That's fair, but I'm gonna push back a little because I'm pretty sure last night against Detroit they won their 50th game by double digits this season.
Yeah, no.
And they have still lost only 3 games by double digits, I think. They aren't gonna get crushed by a lot of teams.
No. But my point is this. They're gonna feel real pressure. And they didn't feel a lot of real pressure in the regular season. And when they did feel pressure in the regular season, they were kind of, it's a little bit of a coin flip. I believe I saw the record was something like 3-4 in games decided by 5 or less. That, to me, is slightly concerning.
I'm not sure that's accurate, but it might be.
It's in, if you go to, Aaron, if you go to
Chop.
ESPN.com, there's a expanded standings where the stuff comes up. My point is this. That's a problem. That's a little scary.
It could be.
And so, like, if I told you OKC faces Minnesota in the second round, you could see Minnesota winning that series, right?
Maybe, yeah. I think OKC would win, but
I think so too. But it wouldn't like stun me if Minnesota won that series.
It would surprise me.
Don't you think Anthony Edwards could be the best player on the court in that series?
No, I think Shea's the best player on the court, and I love Anthony Edwards.
I could see Anthony Edwards being the best player on the court in that series. Not to say I don't
put
want
a little respect on Shea's.
No, yeah,
name.
but but Anthony Edwards is also in that tier of player. He is that
Shea's like in the Jokic Giannis tier, Luka tier right now. Like,
yeah, don't you think that?
I want Ant to get to that tier, but I want him to get there. I think he's totally capable of getting there, but I don't think you could say he's there yet.
No, I don't think he's there yet. But I could see him, like, the playoffs is when this stuff changes sometimes.
Maybe. I think that the main thing that people can point to and have valid skepticism about is, like, who do you trust as a big-time shot maker as a second option more right now?
That's their biggest problem.
LeBron James or Jalen Williams / Chet Holmgren.
Yeah.
Jamal Murray or Jalen Williams / Chet Holmgren.
Yes. Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, for sure. And Jalen Williams, who is kind of on that edge of all NBA, maybe he'll go prove everyone wrong. Like, he's totally capable of proving that he can be that guy. It's just that people haven't seen it yet. He didn't have a very good playoff series against Dallas last year, and that sticks with you until you erase the memory of it, basically. It's just how it goes.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Same thing with, like, Porter in his Minnesota series and all that stuff. Like, right. Maybe it's unfair. He can use that as fuel or whatever, but that's just how it is. People remember that as the most recent thing.
Before we go, likelihood of team making the finals from the Western Conference, starting with OKC on down, if you had to rank that.
Of winning the West?
Yeah, winning the West.
Oh, gosh.
I'll give you mine, and then you can give me yours. So, OKC number 1, I think, right? I think that's the no-brainer. They have the best record. They're a great defensive team.
Yeah.
That shows up in the playoffs more than any place else. So you kind of have to go with them.
I think I go Lakers, too.
I go Denver, too.
I think that's fair too. Either of them are.
I think it's Denver. We go OKC. We go Denver. That's just Nikola Jokic. They got Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. You got to give that to them. Then I go LA. Then I go Golden State. Then I go Minnesota. Then I go Clippers. And the reason for that being the Clippers have to do it for 3 straight series.
I know. That they're just not going to.
Yeah,
so, it's not
right.
happening.
Yes.
At the end of the day, I kind of think there are 3 teams that can really win the West, and then you could maybe talk yourself into Minnesota or Golden State.
Sure.
I think that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Golden State's kind of scary. They've been really good since they got Jimmy. And
They have been good.
Jimmy's a playoff performer.
We'll see. You seem to have let the memory of that last Nuggets-Warriors game slip from your mind. You were really low on them after that game.
I was. I was.
We have you on tape saying, who are their guys? Who are they going to go to, basically,
right.
beyond their,
yes. And, yeah. I mean, that's why I got him behind, the Nuggets, Lakers, OKC.
Yeah.
And I think you might be right that it is really just 3 teams that could really do it. But, I mean, would we have said Dallas at this time last year? I think that would have been a tough one.
I think they were gaining traction. They had such a strong end of the regular season.
So is the Warriors. So has Minnesota.
Yeah.
So have the Clippers.
But Dallas had 1, more size, and 2, Luka at a level that is just and I don't say this as a Steph Curry hater, but Luka was just at a different level from even someone as incredible as Steph Curry.
Steph Curry just scored 51 points in a game and had 14 threes, I think. Or is it 12? 12 threes.
Sure.
Now, granted, it was against Memphis. But, yeah. So
we could do this all day.
Yeah. We don't have time to get to email. I have to get away. And I just checked on iTunes. No new reviews. We got 100 reviews, so that might be the entirety of our listenership. Who knows? But
100 reviews?
Total.
Oh,
since
I see.
the start. But if you haven't gone on iTunes and rated us, 5 stars. Lie with your stars. Tell the truth with your review. If you want to email the show, mschubert@denverpost.com. We'll take your questions and comments. Big one at Golden State on Friday. Real big one.
We shall see. Big 5 games.
Man, it's going to be fascinating to see how this all shakes out and who's playing who. Everybody is hoping for Memphis. Only one of us can.
We'll see how it goes. Until next time, thank you, Sensei.
Thank you.
Looks like we have another dragon, Master Ace, spitting the burning passion. It's about to be a catastrophe. Thought I was the only survivor, but at last we meet. Like the food vegans don't eat. I know you can see the infernal blaze. We would probably burn the stage and leave it with 3rd degrees. And inside of us is an eternal blaze, blazing eternally like a furnace. But it's so hot it's burning the furnace's frame. Your family and furniture isn't safe. Better evacuate, cause the skill we can calibrate reduces the chances of your survival if you ever try to retaliate. So dance to this recital so you can slowly gravitate towards us. Who needs a chorus when you're hotter than Earth's core is? No strings attached with no puppets, yo, we're cordless. I fly even when I'm hurt, yo, that's soaring. Your skill isn't apparent, it's an orphan. We proceed to spit the verse that takes your spirit and lifts it high into the earth's atmospheres. Don't come atmosphere of influence, you squares. I take a spear and put it through you, I raise the stakes. Ha, medium rare, you're the least of the media's fears. Why he's the reason the media's scared. Please be prepared to be impaired. Go see repairs, defeating people in pairs. Jordans, I thought I needed pairs to be compared to the people in pairs.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
hip-hop is as if it's still living. Still got love for the game, I'm still giving and still driven. Like Diddy in the Maybach. I've been reppin' for the city since way back. All y'all rappers better stay back, cause you still can't find me. I'm a needle in a haystack, a rare breed sitting high up in the chariot. What y'all do is getting high up in the Marriott. Well, consider this your wake-up call. If you're married to the game, it's the break-up call. And you ain't wearing a crown if you're not tearing it down. You clowns get found right there in the ground, 6 feet, dirt nap, that's because your shit's weak. I'm a giant, you a pipsqueak. Welcome to my kingdom, yup, the throne has an occupant. Read my name at the bottom of the document. Check the scroll, giving good times like Esther Roll. Peace to Keith E, God bless the soul. Trying to get more checks to hold. On some slick Rick, Mr. T shit, big chest of gold. And the flow still extra cold, like the North Pole, cocaine snow, another lost soul. Bow down, it's the Grand Royal, yup. 20 plus years in the game, still the fans loyal.